Hi, my name is Marc Lalonde. Welcome to the Movement is Medicine podcast. My guests this week are going to be Chantal Hadad and Joelle Emond, nutritionists from the Kateri Memorial Hospital Centre here in Kahnawake. We're going to be talking about fueling your body for exercise, cheat nights, and self-discipline.
Escape the chaos of the everyday and enjoy the waters of the St. Lawrence River with Splish Splash Sea-Doo and boat rentals. Experience the most incredible selection of 2020 Sea-Doos available, as well as our new 22-foot pontoon boat. With a group or on a solo cruise, we've got a fleet of 4 Sea-Doos equipped with sound system for your water adventures. Sit back and relax with our driver on the 12-seater pontoon for a 4 or 7-hour ride. Visit SplishSplashRentals.com or call 438-871-1587 for booking information.
Welcome to the Movement is Medicine podcast. My name is Marc Lalonde. My guests today are dietitians, nutritionists from the Kateri Memorial Hospital Centre. Can you guys introduce yourselves, please?
So hi, good morning. I'm Chantal Hadad. I've been working in Kahnawake for a really long time.
I don't want to say she doesn't want to give up her age.
I don't want to tell anybody how long anymore. But most young people, I can ask them, who's your mother? Let's put it that way.
Fair
and
enough.
I'll know their mother. So part of my job, the fun part of my job is what we call community nutrition. And that is like really putting nutrition out there in the community, talking to people, answering questions. I'm always available as a resource to anyone in the community who wants any help with anything related to food and nutrition. So that's why we're here today. You know, that's part of what we do, putting out there, you know, the information about nutrition and how it can really make you feel your best and be very healthy.
Perfect. We're going to talk a little bit about how we can use nutrition to fuel our daily exercise and our daily requirements. So, Joelle, if you don't mind introducing yourself, please.
My name is Joelle, and I've been working with Chantal, lucky to be working with Chantal for the past almost 10 years now in Kahnawake. And I work mostly, I do the scientific stuff. I work mostly in clinical nutrition in the outpatient department of the hospital. And I'm collaborating with Chantal on community nutrition in activities at schools or out in the community. A lot less than we used to, unfortunately, because the demand for clinical nutrition is growing a lot. So I'm being pulled away in my clinical functions. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to put you guys on the spot right off the bat at the Movement is Medicine podcast. We don't like to beat around the bush too much. So I'm going to give you guys the hardest question you may get. You may not even be ready for it. So I'm going to go ahead and toss this one out. 17 months of pandemic. Lots and lots of people have found solace in alcohol and in food that maybe is not the greatest food in the world. How do we turn that around now?
Beautiful question.
It is definitely. And I'll say that I have observed that in the people I follow for a long time. Like often my work will require to follow a person over multiple years. And I have seen like a huge change in people this year and people's eating, most people anyway. I want to say take care of the root cause. The root cause is emotions. And until that root cause is being addressed, nothing's going to do it.
Sure.
I think the nutrition and the lifestyle changes will come naturally afterwards if you take care of the root cause. So don't overlook the mind. Just take care of it. Stress, de-stress, get out, do whatever makes you feel good. Be at work, exercise. And I think when the mind comes back where it's supposed to be, the nutrition will also come back. And it's interesting because COVID have been an opportunity to highlight that, but that's always been. Like it is a humongous stress. So maybe it is a lot easier to see it now. Because it's been like, it's so huge, it's hard to miss it. But it reminds us that this also exists when COVID is not around. When we do have stressors, we need to address them. And often we go after, like, we go into a diet to address a problem that seems to be nutrition related. But maybe in the end, it's not nutrition related, it's emotionally related. And that's what we need to address. That's what needs to be addressed first to fix the nutrition issue.
That is a great answer. And that segues perfectly into my next question for Chantal. Chantal, tell me a little bit about the emotions behind people's eating habits.
Okay, so I think like Joelle is saying, it's important to acknowledge that emotions are very important and they do drive us. So it's important to acknowledge that. And because that's a much more complicated issue, people often just say, okay, I'm going on a diet, or okay, I'm going on a fitness kick, because that just seems a little bit more manageable than dealing with more deeply rooted problems. So, sometimes it's a trigger. So many times people just start with one thing and then the rest follows. So they'll start maybe with an exercise program, and then they start to feel good, and they're like, okay, maybe I should deal with my nutrition. And then they're still feeling better. And then maybe, hopefully, they'll be like, okay, there's something back there that's not working. Why don't I deal more deeper, to fix whatever is going on, whatever's off. And nutrition, food, and emotions really are very interconnected, because food is not just science. It's not just proteins, carbs, and fats. It's emotions, it's culture, it's family, it's upbringing, it's pleasure, and it can go on and on and on. If you're cooking, it's creativity, and it goes on and on. So food is huge. We can't just isolate it as a science, as a chemical. It's very connected to everything. And I think when we recognize and acknowledge that, we've already made a first step in dealing with all of it. So once when you see yourself, if you see that there's an emotional connection, then you can start addressing it. And you can also give into it sometimes. Sometimes, you are just eating for pleasure. You're eating because you're with other people and you're enjoying it. And it's okay to do that, because that's the next thing that happens. People feel guilty. And then that's a big mess, because when you don't feel good about what you're doing, you feel guilty, then you're hard on yourself. And then it starts another negative cycle.
Right. When people talk about the vicious cycle of emotional eating, guilt, beating oneself up, going right back to the bad habit, how do you break that cycle, and how do you not go back?
I think we tend to focus on the wrong part of the cycle most of the time. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people will come to the office focusing on the binge part of the cycle, but the binge is an outcome of something. It came from somewhere, and we tend to overlook it. Like, we look at the binge, we focus on the binge, and now we tell ourselves, we feel the guilt, and we're like, I'm so not good, or I don't have enough willpower, and I should not have done that. Then as a result, we try to fix the binge, and we're like, I'm going to restrict myself again. I'm going to go on a diet, and I'm going to stop it, and I'm really going to follow the rules strictly. And then maybe it is the restriction that actually leads you to the binge. Instead of looking at it from the binge to the restriction, we must flip it around and look at it from the restriction is causing the binge. And then we just get stuck. So I think that for most people, when you start seeing it the other way around, that's when it eventually stops. But it's so hard, because it asks for a lot of let go, to trust that it's without depriving yourself that you're going to not end up binging again. Is difficult, because it's years. We're talking probably years of diets and restrictions, and it's probably you feel very insecure going back to I'm going to allow myself to just breathe here and eat normally. So some people manage to do that on their own. I'm thinking of a few people I've worked with who worked very closely with a psychologist or with a counselor to actually try to flip it around.
Right.
And again, it goes back to addressing the root causes, I think.
Emotional eating does come out of trauma. It comes out of stress. It's a vicious cycle, as we've said. How do you help people identify their triggers, and how do you help them get past those triggers?
Well, I think in the office, we do talk about, we try to go beyond nutrition and talk about where are things coming from, where are habits coming from, what's your culture, what are your traditions, what's your story, what's your journey, what have you been through. And if we ever feel that it's a deeply rooted issue and a bigger outcome, then I'll recommend that people consult with a psychologist, to bring a psychologist on the team. We have awesome services at KSCS, or sometimes people are not feeling comfortable consulting in town and they'll go out of town. That's also something I've seen a lot. If it becomes clear that it's the root cause behind the eating is a psychological issue, then we get the professional help needed.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about, let's switch gears. Let's talk about someone who has decided now, I want to make a change. I'm going to start exercising regularly. I'm going to start watching what I eat a little bit better. and I'm going to start making positive changes in my life, one little bit at a time. What's the process for that? What's the best process for keeping those changes and perpetuating them over a lifetime?
So I think the first step is usually self-awareness. Just to kind of do a little, ask yourself, where am I at? What am I going to start working on? So it could be, some people say, I cut soda and chips and I lost 300 pounds. Well, not 300, but 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great if you eat soda and chips, but if you don't, that doesn't apply to you, obviously. So it really, again, I'm just trying to emphasize that it's very personal where you choose to begin. And so a good place to start is we often ask people to keep a food journal. So just write down everything you ate every day with a time. And if you think there's something going on emotionally, you might want to write a little note about emotions or about what's going on, like why did you eat the whole bag of chips? Just write something about the circumstance, like I was watching a movie or my friend came over with a bag, or just to help you get a picture of it, because you do this for a week or two and it gives you a great self-awareness. You can just look at it and be like, oh my God, I'm not eating any vegetables, or oh my God, I eat only between 2 and 6 p.m. So you can slowly start to identify where you might want to put a little bit of work. And then the next step is to decide not only where you need to, but where do you want to start? So for some people, it could be as simple as eat regularly. Many people skip meals. They go hours and hours without eating, and that's problematic nutritionally, which we can get into if you want. But that could be a really good place to start. Eat regularly. Have a healthy snack in between your meals if you're hungry. That's another big thing. Listen to your body, to your hunger, because if you're hungry, your body is telling you it needs fuel, it needs food. So it's not crazy. We're well made, so that's a good, if you're full, stop eating. So just people sometimes have a full disconnect with their body. They don't know if they're hungry or full. And that sometimes happens from years of dieting because you're trying to ignore what your body's telling you. So it's again to listen to your body again, to reconnect so that you can have a better self-awareness, and then you'll know where to start.
That's great advice. How would you advise people to listen to their body? Are there strategies that you would put in place to help them listen to their bodies better? I know personally that I tend to eat slower when I'm in a situation where I would like to control what I'm eating a little bit better. Yeah. I will realize I don't quite have to eat quite as much to fill up if I eat slower. Is that something that computes with what you've heard, seen, and lived with?
When we are trying to master something, we need practice. So we need to exaggerate it to actually get it eventually naturally without overthinking it. So I think overthinking it is the key word for mindful eating. Like, for example, the example you gave was awesome. Slow down. Exaggerately slowing down, like eat every bite and feel the texture, connect with the texture, like pay attention to how does it feel like in my mouth? What does it taste like? How does it smell like? What does it look like? Most of the time we'll just grab a bite of like a handful of food, throw it in our mouth. It's already swallowed. You don't even so slow all the process down. That's really, really, really going to help. Over exaggerating, just like if you're practicing hockey, a hockey practice doesn't look like a game. It's the same drill over and over and over and over again. So with food, we can do the same thing, just slowing things down, be mindful, think of your 5 senses. Think of the touch, the smell, the taste.
I feel like that's really great advice. And it leads me into the next topic of conversation, which is a lot of people. My experience has been, let me rephrase, as a trainer and as a person who works in the fitness industry, my experience has been a lot of people in their mid-20s to mid-30s don't tend to concern themselves with their nutrition and their exercise habits. They're too busy getting a foothold in the job market. They're too busy having kids or learning to be with a partner or whatever. And then they get to their mid-30s and they're like, my body's not doing what I want it to do anymore. I need to make some changes. Does switching to the light muffins at the office is going to fix that?
So people often focus on one very isolated aspect of food. And it doesn't work that way. It's the big picture that counts. And enjoyment of that food also, as Joelle was saying, with the five senses and all that. So one thing like switching to light muffins is going to do nothing at all, because you could also eat 5 light muffins, So,
It's true.
and then oftentimes the foods that are marketed as light or as zero this and zero that, you have to be really critical about what you're looking at, because sometimes they'll be light in, what does that mean anyway? Light in sugar, but they might be heavy in fat, or they might be light colored. Light doesn't even really mean anything. So you have to go deeper and see what it is. And many things are marketed as gluten-free. Well, who says that we shouldn't eat gluten? It's a thing for some people, but it's not necessarily a thing for everyone. And some things that have always been gluten-free are now
Still marketed
suddenly
as gluten-free. Yeah, like apples.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. And
Yeah.
you're like, well, it's never
What is that
been
about?
that.
There's never been wheat in ketchup. So why would there be gluten? It makes a ton of sense. And let's talk about nutrition myths. We just touched on light, diet this, light that. Often, as you say, they'll take out sugar and replace it with artificial sweetener, or up the fat content to create taste, or drop the fat content and replace it with some sort of artificial filler that may be worse or more toxic to your body. What should people do if they want to make a nutritional change today? Their next meal, how should it look?
I'll just touch base again on the food journaling, because I think from observation, a lot of people are overlooking this part. It's the most important part. That's exactly what we do when someone walks into an office. We look at your whole situation and we try to identify the gaps. And often what people tend to do is they'll just go on the latest trend. Like, in the media now we're talking about, we all know the diets, they come and go. Like now it could be whatever, keto, intermittent fasting, sugar-free, gluten-free, and then it cycles, and then eventually there's going to be a next best thing, and it will continue. Life will continue. The life of diet will continue and go on. But you have to identify what are your issues, and not everyone shares the same issues. Mm-hmm. Everyone is unique, and everyone has their own unique story. So number one thing is identifying what do you need to change. And then from there, then you consult with someone to find out the strategies. Now, you try to find solutions to that specific problem, not a one-size-fits-all solution, something that works for you, for your own situation and your own needs. And not everyone has the same nutritional needs either. The person that trains all week long and that has goals of increasing performances and strength will not feed the same way as someone who's like me, working at a desk job all day, behind a desk, sitting on a chair. So we have to adjust to that. And I think that's the most important part, is making sure that you're not hopping on the latest trend. Maybe the latest trend is good for you, but maybe not. Maybe that's not what you need to go for. And then you have to think of your project as when you're building a house. You're not building the house, the house doesn't appear in the field like boom, instantly, exactly. You pour a slab, and then you make plans, and then you pour a slab, and then you build walls, and then you add the finishing touch. And you have to do that if you want your project to be successful. And most people will tend to go all out. It's like, okay, it's today. I'm getting in shape. I'm starting exercising. I'm eating well. I'm washing every day and combing my hair every day. But if you want it to last, you have to take it slow. Take it one bite at a time. When you master a part, when the slab is ready, the cement is poured, it's solid, then you build the walls. And when the walls are straight and it works, then you put the finishing touch. And then you have to keep it up, because once you build your house and if you let it go, it's going to go back to hell.
That's a brilliant metaphor. That is an absolutely wonderful metaphor for making changes. You have to put down blocks, you have to build a foundation, and you have to create an existence from scratch.
Small changes will take you far most of the time. That's what I've been doing this job for over 10 years. That's always where I've seen the most success, is in people who would take it one step at a time. And literally, as a nutrition professional, when I'm sitting in my office and someone tells me how great they're doing and they've changed so much since the past, obviously I'm very happy for them, but inside I'm very concerned. And this raises automatically a red flag for me, when is it gonna go? off track.
Right.
Like it's coming.
Right.
It's coming. And I'm watching. I'm sitting and every appointment I'm asking, like, oh, have we gone off track yet?
Right. So the non-sustainable habits are as much a concern as overeating or unsustainable nutrition habits before going on a weight loss or a diet regimen. How important is it? We just touched on food labels. How important is it to look at the ingredients and the nutritional information on packaging?
Okay, so I'm really glad you asked that, because I was just thinking that almost the best quick fix answer of how do I start right now is by eating foods that don't have a label. So real food. Okay, so I get this question. People always want to know how to read labels. And I'm thinking, what are you eating that you need to read so many labels and compare so many things?
Mm-hmm.
If you eat real food, it doesn't have labels on it.
It doesn't have nutritional labels.
It's the fruits and vegetables. It's your dried beans and peas. It's your fresh produce, your fresh meats, if you're eating meat, or, it's the perimeter of the grocery store. So most of the time there are no labels, but of course, eventually you're going to eat something with a label on it. If you want to talk a bit more about labels, again, it's depending on you. What are you looking for? Do you need to limit your salt? Do you need to limit your fats? Do you have an allergy or an intolerance? Are you looking for a specific ingredient? So labels are super useful, especially for people with allergies, because the ingredients are listed. And people with allergies get to know very quickly how to identify the ingredients they're allergic to, and they're listed and you can find them easily. You know what to avoid. Then, now in a more general way, if you're trying to avoid something specific like sodium, which for most people, it's a good idea to reduce your sodium for most people. They show you a percentage, and just a quick rule of thumb, 5% is a little, 15% is a lot. So that's a way of looking at it. Another important point with label reading is look at the portion sizes. What are they talking about? So the label is for a certain amount of food. So typically you're going to see a drink. For example, I've seen this so many times, and it's like, that's cheating. They're cheating.
Yep.
The drink is 700 ml, let's say, and the nutrition information is for 200 ml.
Mm-hmm.
So most people, many people don't read that detail, and they'll just read and be like, oh, there's only, 50 grams of whatever in this bottle. But no, it's not just for the bottle. It's for only 200 ml.
Right, it's for
so how much are you actually drinking? It's 3 times that. So very important to keep that in mind. Really pay attention. And especially if you're comparing one product to another, are you comparing the same portion size?
Mm-hmm.
If I may add too, I think people tend to focus on the calorie a lot,
right?
Because that's what we hear of, right? If you're on a diet and it's such a poor indicator. Like looking at calories is like looking at a gift that's already wrapped, and you don't know what's in the box,
right?
So, and I think that can be very misleading, because sometimes something might look very attractive because it has low calories, but it will also not fill you at all.
Well,
so
the return on energy is going to be lower as well, because calories are
energy,
food energy.
Exactly.
Right? I lift weights a couple times a day, every day. And I love that. And I move around a lot. So part of what I eat on a daily is I have protein bars. Protein bars, I have to check the labels, because when I go to the grocery store or Costco, which is where I buy my protein bars, there's like 18 different kinds. And I always check the labels, because some of them, are going to carry 18 to 20 grams of sugar per bar, which is like a candy bar. I might as well be eating chocolate after my workout, for goodness sakes. So I'll look for the protein bar with the most amount of protein and the least amount of sugar to sort of maximize my return. Am I doing the right thing?
Why, I think we don't have enough information to answer that question. That would be very irresponsible from our part. I want to know the big picture, but it's a good point. I mean, like we said at the beginning, this is a very individual thing, and you have to look at your whole needs and what's your lifestyle, and probably, if I assume, like if you're lifting bars a couple of times per day, maybe you're not always doing it at home, maybe you're on the road, and thus the bar becomes convenient because you're traveling. Very convenient. If you were benching in your home, well, maybe you'd be eating from the fridge.
Yes.
And I think that's where we're just going back to, there's no one size fit all. Right. It has to be tailored to you.
Right. And I like to use that as an example because I do move around a lot during the day. I've got, 4 different appointments today and I'll be going to 4 different places. So eating on the run, it becomes very important. Otherwise I show up and I just don't have the energy to work with my clients. It's exhausting. So from a food standpoint, I like to graze. I like to eat 200 to 300 calorie meals, like 4 to 6 times a day is my ideal. I'll get up in the morning, I'll have a protein shake and my nutritional supplements, my fish oil, and all the other good stuff. And then I will eat spinach and chicken as often as possible throughout the day. That's with a protein bar here and there, depending on if I'm feeling low energy or not. I will also have a fair amount of white rice after my first workout of the day, but I'm limiting simple starches for the most part. Analyze me.
Well, in the nutshell, we usually recommend real food more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So right away, I'd be like, well, why do you need supplements and why do you need, powders and all that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I could safely say that you could probably do the same nutritionally and better nutritionally for your body with real food.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the first thing that I would think of, because supplements sometimes, like especially like vitamins and that, it gives us a false sense of security.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just take this pill and everything will be fine.
Right.
It's not exactly the same as eating well.
Right.
There's a lot of extra things that you find in the real vegetable or in the real fruit that you're not putting in a vitamin pill. So the orange, just as an example, vitamin C, orange, most people can associate that. So if I extract the vitamin C, it's just vitamin C. But if I eat the orange, I'm eating fiber, I'm eating vitamin C, I'm getting some fluid, I'm getting some phytochemicals, which are all those colorful things that are in there. They're not in the pill. Mm-hmm. So there's added benefits to real food. Mm-hmm. So I can see where sometimes, supplements or protein bars, etc., help you because you're really on the run, or it helps you manage. But don't forget about real food, because it's also giving you a lot more.
Of course.
And then the other thing, like from what you say, to me, it sounds very regimented. Mm-hmm. So again, that depends on the person. You have to see what's working for you or not. For some people, that really doesn't work. For me, that would not work. I don't like being regimented. I go with the flow, and I attach a lot of enjoyment to food, and I try different things and I cook. And so everyone's different in that sense. So you have to see if it fits you. Mm-hmm. Another way to know if it's fitting you is get your medical checkups. Make sure everything's in order, because some people are eating like maybe too much protein. There's such a thing, because your body has to get rid of the extra protein. If you have any kind of issue with your kidneys, which you may or may not be aware of, that might not be a good idea for you. So check in. Maybe if you're in your 20s, you might not need to check in, but as you get older, do check in.
Right. And
just make sure everything's in its place. Your cholesterol, your blood lipids, is all that in place? If you don't have diabetes or pre-diabetes, check those things, because as soon as you have a little something that's like a little warning sign, it's really worth taking care of it before it develops into a bigger problem.
Awesome.
It's your way of completing the loop, actually. It's like you observe your eating habits, then you get into a healthy lifestyle, then you feel good and you have energy. And so you carry on with your life and eventually everything goes well. But if something goes off, like Chantal said, if it's being identified that something's going wrong, then you correct it and you adjust what you're doing to actually make it work and keep on going. It comes back to you need to individualize as much as possible. Mm-hmm. This is one topic that has been talked about in the past couple of years, but there's not a one good way of eating. There are multiple good ways of eating, and the good way of eating for you, it's however you're eating that keeps you in wellness, like in a unsick, like not sick, in a healthy body. So you have to use that. You have to use the cues to, okay, I'm on my spot. I'm on my X, or no, I'm not on my X. I need to change something. And it's part of the frustration. Often, like very often people tell us like, they always change their mind. We don't know what to eat anymore. Like eat this, not that, do this, don't do that. Because the answer is that there's not one answer. There are multiple answers, and not everyone respond the same way to different approaches. So you whenever you choose an approach to a way of eating, you have to look at yourself. You have to look at what works for you and what are your needs. We're all born with like a genetic background, and then we have like our life history, and then we have what we do for a living that's going to influence what's the best way for us to eat. And then obviously, like we said at the beginning, someone who trains all day and who trains many people will not eat the same way as someone like me who's sitting behind my office all day. So you have to, before you select a way, and not the best way, like your best way. And that best way is not set in time. It will evolve. If you're not evolving, then you're going to miss the point. You're going to miss it. Your needs today, they're not going to be the same ones in 20 years from now. So you have to keep changing, right?
Makes
and
sense.
adapting. And
The only constant in life is change.
right.
Let me ask you this. We've touched a lot on nutrition and dietetics and the importance of fueling the body properly and how we do that. How important is exercise in getting to and maintaining a healthy body weight or just healthy body, period?
Very important. It's part of it's a whole. It's part of the story. I find that sometimes people put too much hope in the exercise bag. It's part of the strategy. It's part of a lifestyle. And sometimes people would put all their eggs in the same basket, like, oh, I'm exercising, so I'm fine. Well, no. You also have to look at how well are you sleeping? How's your stress level? How well are you eating? That's part of it, right? So I find that it's a mistake to put all your eggs in the same basket, and nutrition is part of that. Like if you think of only nutrition and you ignore everything else, that's not good either. But it should be part of our life, and it didn't have to probably at a certain time because it was just life. Like you would work hard to survive and live, but not anymore. And in the society we created for ourselves, where we're taking the car to go to the grocery market and we're sitting in our car or sitting at our desks all day, we have to do something to compensate. We have to, because the body is not made to be still. It's made to be moving.
Well, we agree very strongly on that. That's why we call this the Movement is Medicine podcast. How would you counsel someone to become more active when maybe all they're doing is sitting at a desk all day long?
So it's exactly the same approach as we would do with food. It would be small steps at a time, and you start depending on where you're at. So for some people, getting up, I've had people where you just say, just make sure that every hour you get up for 5 minutes. That's all. That's where we're starting. Or a 10-minute walk in the morning, and if you can, do one more in the afternoon. And depending on the person, anything is better than nothing. So if you're doing nothing at all, and then you start doing a little bit, that's great. And if you're doing a little bit and you want to do more, then it develops like that. And with exercise, it's like with nutrition, you have to find your right spot, what fits you, So if you're healthy, if you're free of disease and everything's or if you have a chronic disease that is well controlled, you're doing great, depending on what you're doing. For some people, it could be just walking. For some people, it could be training. For some people, it could be a sport, whatever sport. But you don't forget the joy that goes in there. You have to have fun with it. You can't be punishing yourself with exercise or with food, because if you take the pleasure out of it, you're just not going to want to do it.
I'll add to this, make it fun, because it's not going to last if it's not fun.
Right.
So whether it is get with buddies people that you enjoy spending time with, or ask for professional help. Like there are professional people who do that for a living, coaching people to exercise, and just find something that works for you. And if you're not enjoying it and you're not having fun, I would say just change it up. Go to
Find
the next
something
one.
else.
It's not about stopping physical activity.
Right.
It's about just change, make something else, change it to something else. Just like when eating vegetables, if a person tells me, well, I don't like broccoli, find something else.
Yeah.
But another vegetable.
Yeah.
And you know what else on that note that I find really interesting that I've read is there's people who typically it's an issue with kids often where they're spending too much time on video games and stuff like that, or watching TV. And for people who are inactive to that extent, sometimes just doing a hobby, which would be not necessarily exercise, just a very moderate hobby
Off the screen.
is actually a step away from being sedentary. So it could be a hobby like, I don't know, doing puzzles or reading, crafts, painting,
Reading.
whatever. There's actually more movement involved in that than just sitting in front of a screen. So interestingly, it could be anything. Just find some enjoyment in some kind of movement.
So if I'm taking away from this what I think I should, are you guys saying that little things add up over time? Is that what you're saying?
Totally.
Exactly what we're saying.
I would absolutely agree with that. I share that philosophy with my training clients. I'm like, if we just aim to get a little tiny bit better every day, and we do that little tiny bit every day, it adds up to gigantic things, and people are capable of gigantic things. And all it takes is
It's also a matter of confidence and quality of life. Like if you start by running the marathon, you're not going to do it for a long time. You're not going to like your life.
Nope.
But if you build up to that, then you're going to feel pride that you were able to achieve such a big thing. I often think of I tell the mountain story whenever people get to me with all this huge project and they're not likely to break up into smaller steps and smaller parts. And I tell them about the mountain. And it's like, if you were in front of the mountain and you wanted to get to the top, what would you do? It's like, well, I would start walking to the top. Right. You wouldn't take your foot and try to put it on top. Like, this is not possible. You cannot do that. That's insane. So you have every big achievement starts the same way. It starts with a single step in the right direction, and that can be applied to whatever you want to achieve that is big or that seems big.
Absolutely agree. Little background. When I started running marathons in 2015, it was awful, but I got there by starting to run 400 meters at a time.
There you go.
I would walk my dog at night. I'd walk it to the train station near my house. Then I'd run home from the train station. Then I'd cough up a lung in my driveway, and then I'd go inside. And I'd repeat that a little bit more every night until I, started running from the other end of the train station, and then run from another train station. And then little things add up, and, ran my first marathon in 2015. My second marathon in 2016, and that was the last one. I won't be doing any more of those. They're not that pleasant.
At least you did it.
Exactly. It was a goal, and I set it, and I accomplished it, and little things go a long way. So this has been a fantastic interview. I really, really appreciate having you guys in here today. I'd love to have you back. I'd love to discuss this further and have some more discussions about fitness myths and nutrition myths and all that good stuff. But this has been the Movement is Medicine podcast. My name is Marc Lalonde. I'd like to thank my guests, Joelle Emond and Chantal Hadad from the Kateri Memorial Hospital Centre here in Kahnawake. You guys have been remarkable. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
The invite.
Yoriwaze would like to thank the Community Media Strategic Support Fund for their support. And we'd like to entice all our listeners to go check out our video series on our website at KahnawakeNews.com. Look us up on Facebook or on YouTube, like, and subscribe.